Hello and welcome to this review of Middle-earth: Shadow of War. I'm your host KTB. This is a rapid review format, 5 minutes or less so we don't waste your time. If you'd like to hear this at a more normal speed, set the video to 0.75 playback. I've played 30 plus hours of Shadow of War and this video features mid-game gameplay and no story spoilers. Middle-earth: Shadow of War, hereafter Shadow of War, is a triumph of mechanics over mood. It is an example of a game designed by focus groups, playtesting and committee where general mechanics are excellent and the story, world and immersion comes second to continued feedback loops and the machinations of gameplay. Shadow of War is the sequel to Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, both of which are third-person action RPGs set in the Lord of the Rings universe. The game is a mixture of well-tuned combat mechanics, multiple minigames, collectibles and micro-routines dressed up in the Lord of the Rings lore. You play as Talion, the bland protagonist from the first game who has lost a wife and family to the rise of darkness in Mordor, which precedes the Lord of the Rings storyline. There are interesting ideas here. Talion is bonded to an elvish spirit which gifts him with certain powers and the curse of eternal life. Your elvish ghost side is largely the stealth and archery end of your powers, where Talion himself looks after the close combat and swordplay of the duo. The sequel expands on the first title by allowing you to battle across multiple fortresses in and around Mordor to push back the forces of darkness and fight to control forts for yourself whilst playing through a story-driven campaign. It is a semi-open world with abilities and powers that unlock under a standard XP system and to which you can customize your playstyle. Like the ghost bonded mechanic, Shadow of War features an expanded set of interesting gameplay ideas from the first, including being able to turn orcs to fight for you, recruit orc captains to your army, and now deploy basic training and strategy to increase your orcs' abilities and deploy them in large set-piece battles to control forts and areas. At the beginning, Shadow of War is a triumph of mechanics over mood, but first, graphics. At the highest settings, which require a fairly meaty PC setup, Shadow of War is a great looking game. The textures and animations are sharp and detailed with the free high-res texture pack DLC. The weapons in combat are smooth and ranged combat as well as close quarters are polished well. Orc captain variety and environments vary well in both look and feel. No mean feat when you consider the game is largely set in the barren ashy lands of Mordor. The orc captains vary a lot, but after hours of gameplay you will start to notice the same body parts, helmets and armor cropping up again and again. It's not immersion breaking, but once you've seen the same burning helmet 5 or 10 times it starts to grate. Weapons and armor vary a little early on, with capes and armor sets becoming more regal and impressive as they level up, or you put on different item sets. However, as you use the bow, for example, in ghost mode, these graphics change barely, if at all. Equally, after a certain point, the swords and armor stop looking greatly different, and you end up with a fairly generic mid to high end character look. More variety in armor and items would have been welcome, still each is detailed and impressive to look at. Where the graphics don't quite work is in the lighting model. The first game in the series, Shadow of Mordor, featured dark, moody lighting for the most part, and was criticised on occasion for being too dark and slick looking. There is more variety in Shadow of War in lighting models and palettes. However, because of this, some are less polished and can leave the characters and world feeling more washed out or pastel-esque with the darker, gritty original. So more variety in the lighting model overall, but a little less mood as a result. Next, audio. The sound effects are generally excellent. Meaty combat impacts, the swish of swords, deep explosions, a properly spaced orc conversation and environmental audio. The orc voiceovers are particularly good, using the same Cockney English of the Lord of the Rings fills. Call blimey, Governor, I can't wait to kill ya. With plenty of griping, moaning and downright bizarre overheard orc conversations as you creep, climb, slice and shoot your way through orc forts. However, again, over a long enough playthrough you will hear the same voices, quotes and introductions again and again, repeatedly with the orc captains. If you play the extra minigames and online battles, for example, you'll hear the same orc captain voices and canned introductions repeatedly, which quickly means the orcs lose their individuality. There are just too many in this game, with too little graphic and audio variety that ultimately you do not feel attached to your bodyguards or captains as they rapidly become generic. The music is largely unobtrusive, occasionally rising up for battle or cinematic moments, and it's all in keeping with the orchestral Lord of the Rings style overall. Welcome, if a little underwhelming. Finally, gameplay, and it is here where Shadow of War really shines and ultimately also lets the title down. To explain. Oh babe, fuck off, you just ruined the recording. Finally, gameplay, and it is here where Shadow of War really shines and ultimately lets the title down. To explain, the combat loop of striking, parrying, shooting and jumping is smooth and impactful, especially when playing with a gamepad. The second-by-second gameplay loop fires off constant rewards in terms of item drops, XP earned and general combat loop. This is complemented by multiple, indeed too many, minigames, which are sprinkled throughout all the levels, collecting lost human items, putting back together fragments of Shelob's memories and completing challenges, etc. All amidst the general gameplay of recruiting or killing captains, turning orcs and conquering forts and regions. The problem here is that all the mechanics are fun in their own right, but ultimately they become annoying busy work and immersion breaking. It feels as if Shadow of War's mechanics were designed and thoroughly tested by lots of focus groups and psychologists to keep up a constant interest and feedback mechanic and positive reinforcement loops, typical of the loot box psychology that rightly gets so much criticism. Indeed, when Shadow of War was first released, it was one of the greatest sinners in terms of pushing players to buy new loot and microtransactions. These mechanics have since largely been removed to the developer's credit. However, the underlying gameplay is still the same. Lots of very well polished ideas and routines that ultimately come second to the mood and story, making them feel tacked on and immersion breaking. Shadow of War's best mechanic is integrated from the prequel Shadow of Mordor. When a captain beats you in combat, they level up, becoming more powerful, adding extra abilities and strengths and become your nemesis. This means you come to really hate the orc captains that cause you most trouble as they beat you and become ever more powerful. On the flip side, when you finally kill or recruit them, the sense of achievement is very high. The nemesis mechanic is excellent and unfortunately would work better in a different game more worthy of it. So the ultimate verdict for Shadow of War is that it is fun and addictive title that looks and sounds excellent with multiple different mechanics and items worth your time. However, for a game about an elven ghost bound to a mortal cursed to live until his task is finished, the cruel irony is that Shadow of War itself has no soul. It is a series of well-tested mechanics dressed up in the Lord of the Rings game. Buy it if on sale, but do not pay full price. What are your thoughts on Shadow of War? What should I review next? Please like, comment and subscribe to let me know. Thanks for your time.